So now it's time for Tuukka Tanninen to talk about formal methods in philosophy and some ideas from Hintikka.
Thank you for inviting me. I'll start with some general matters. I have a project on Hintikka Nahlas, and just a few words about that in general. It is now known as Archive Jaakko Hintikka Collection 907 in the National Library database, and there are two current research topics on that Nahlas, and first one is the early period of modal logic in Helsinki, while the other one is on today's agenda, formal methods in philosophy. And now this first topic, I don't say that there has been progress, but I say that there are some black marks on white background. But this second topic, this is just beginning. It's under construction. This is my first talk about this topic, so there will be no strong conclusions, just some ideas. And just a little bit about this Hintikka Nahlas. It's enormous. The content is Hintikka's scientific manuscripts, lecture materials, correspondence, notes, research plans, and so it's the scientific Nahlas. And there is another collection for private papers. It's also in National Library. This scientific Nahlas, it's available in the so-called special collections reading room, erikoislukusali, as they say in National Library. It is just across the street to that direction. And these first 420 boxes may be ordered for research, and they may be studied there in designated research area. The latest catalog is relatively new. I have it here if you want to take a look at it. It's incomplete and it's in Finnish, but it gives you some idea what there is. The materials is owned by University of Helsinki, and the immaterial copyright is owned by a legate, which is led by our good friend Paavo Pylkkänen right here. So, nothing more about the Nahlas. Let's go to the topic of my talk, which is formal methods in philosophy and some Hintikkian ideas about that. Now, as you have probably noticed, there is this family of formal methods in philosophy: syntactic characterizations of inference systems, Tarskian methods in formal semantics, probably two the most well-known, but of course other stuff too, statistics and probability. These methods, their justification and purpose is very straightforward in their limited segment of formal philosophy. But sometimes, and quite often, especially in the past, you saw these methods applied also in so-called traditional, non-formal philosophy, like in case of ethics or problem of free will or problem of skepticism. Now, we might ask that what is the purpose and the justification of formal methods in these non-formal contexts? Now, Jaakko Hintikka was one philosopher who was known to apply formal methods extensively. As we heard before, Ilkka Niiniluoto's joke, or he was citing Mario Bunch, it was Mario Bunch's joke, that Hintikka was excellent in formalization, but he never applied his formal machinery to any traditional real philosophical problem. Now, as Ilkka told you that this was not true, I agree totally. This has absolutely zero credibility. These kinds of sarcastic jokes, they should at least have some kernel of truth in order to be funny. And in my opinion, this wasn't funny at all. I mean, Hintikka definitely applied his formal machinery to traditional big philosophical questions, and he also applied his formal techniques to some really special questions like aesthetics of cubism. Now, Hintikka has a paper, he talks about a structural sexism and inequality in general within a model theory. And he has a paper where he applies quantification over functions into aesthetics of cubism. Now, I would imagine that any person working on inequality or visual arts would be quite surprised to see detailed mathematical symbolism in an article, in a paper of that person's field. And now I think that there is a fair question that what purpose mathematical notation serves in these kinds of contexts, and what is the justification of this type of formal methodology. Now, logic teachers like myself, our first thought is probably that formalism is an instrument of clarification. You try to clarify a philosophical claim, clarify an inference, clarify a pattern, an argument, or something like that. At least that's what we tell to students when they ask that, what is the use of logic? That's a sort of a stock answer. But in this case, I think this is not the not an illuminating answer. In fact, Hintikka seldom used formal language for clarification. If he wanted to clarify a point or an argument or an inference, he usually did it in plain English. And I think his thought was pretty much the same that Alfred Tarski had, I mean, like the forefather of formal semantics. Tarski also thought that if you have something to say, then you can just say it in ordinary language. You don't need a formal language for that. Meaning in formal language is always parasitic of natural language, as you probably know. If you do model theoretic semantics, which is the basic type of formal semantics, this semantical clause, it works because there are natural language expressions like no and or. And if you use these expressions, you can clarify the meaning of an arrow or something like that. It's not the other way around. The arrow does not clarify the meaning of not and or, but it's precisely the other way around. So I think this was Hintikka's basic idea also, that if you want to say something clearly, you can do it in plain English. So why formalism then? If we think about use of formal methods in analytic tradition, like historically, there is the starting point of Russell and Frege, the ideal language method. For Russell, philosophy, at least at this point, it was about analyzing difficult or philosophically interesting propositions, and this analysis, it happened in two phases. First, there was the transformation of problematic proposition into a formal language. And then there was the business of correlating the linguistic elements with the elements of the world. You give the variables the values, objects, and you correlate predicates with the properties. And the end result of this kind of process, it's metaphysics, semantics or metaphysics. And the main justification of this, why it works, at least according to Russell and perhaps Frege, was that there is an ideal language. For Russell, it was classical first-order logic, or at least classical first-order logic was an ideal tool for assessing the ideal language. But this method requires something like this, because, I mean, it is quite obvious that if you just translate something into another language, there is not that much philosophical progress or philosophical results to be gained. If there's a problematic proposition and I translate it to Japanese or Esperanto, I mean, it is still going to be problematic. It's not going to miraculously be clarified or something like that. So, but if you do it with the ideal language, then there are these wonderful results in the vicinity. Now, as Ilkka Niiniluoto mentioned, Hintikka worked on these conceptual tools and kept creating new and new tools and applied these tools to interesting philosophical problems. Now, one interesting paper that I managed to find from Nahlas was called "There is Only One Logic, but it is not the one you know." And this is an unpublished Hintikka's paper around year 2007. And now the question is that, did Hintikka believe in ideal language? And now I would say that he definitely flirted with the idea, also in this paper, and at this time it would have been IF logic, the form of logic that he developed in 90s with Gabriel Sandu. And there is definitely a possible interpretation that for Hintikka, IF logic was the ideal language in Russellian sense. But I am not sure about this, and I am not going to take that interpretational line, and that's why there's a question mark after the claim. Now, as I understand it, Quine tried to do something quite similar than Russell did, but without this, without assuming ideal language. Now, for Quine, roughly scientific theories correlate with the world in the first place, and they may be regimented into a canonical notation, which is for basically first order logic, probably with some things eliminated. He didn't like proper names, so individual constants, so there would be only variables. But if we do this regimentation into a canonical notation of first order logic, then according to Quine, this provides us a way to talk about reality and world at the philosophical level. And this does not require ideal language. We can change the language. The more important thing is that there is transparent semantics, model theoretical semantics for this canonical notation, and the working language or the object language that we are interpreting, it might be different, but nevertheless this provides a way to talk about our ontological commitments or the ontological commitments of our theories. Now, I would say that Hintikka's view, in the end, it was something along these lines rather than Russellian lines. Hintikka had a strong emphasis on model theory and model theoretical semantics, but I will say something about that in connection of the next slide. But let's just say something about Kripke's method. I would say that the general picture that was that the Quinean approach was like the way to go, okay, but if we take into account the development of quantified modal logics and think about that the quantified modal logic that provides the canonical notation, then in the Kripkean picture this leads to the recognition of metaphysically necessary truths. And so the metaphysically necessary truths, they are among our ontological commitments, or ontological commitment of scientific theories. Now, in relation to this, Hintikka definitely thought that quantified modal languages are important, they are needed in analysis of modality in general, and they are needed in explicating the consequences of our existential and epistemic claims, as well as the consequences of our obligations. But Hintikka was quite skeptical about this metaphysical necessity, and he wrote numerous articles criticizing this project of recognizing metaphysically necessary truths. An example is this Hintikka's paper from 1982, Is Alethic Modal Logic Possible, which is a critique of a Kripkean approach in this topic. So my hypothesis, perhaps, or some of them that I will work on in the future, first is that IF logic and other tools that Hintikka created, possible word semantics and others, they are important tools, as Ilkka Niiniluoto said, conceptual tools, and in some sense you could say that IF logic is some kind of a basic logic of ours. It has some extended features, but Hintikka would probably agree on this point, but he would not say that IF logic is an ideal language in the Russellian or Frege sense. In general, another point, in general, in Hintikka's approach, philosophical problems and puzzles must be put into contexts. So special questions should be dealt within wider frameworks of thought. This is one point that he kept on making. It's a paper called Emperor's New Intuitions from 1999. Hintikka was not a big fan of puzzles, such as Frege's puzzle of Morning Star and Evening Star. He kept saying that we shouldn't think about those kinds of problems in isolation, but they should be considered within wider frameworks. And one super wide framework of thought for Hintikka was definitely model theory, model theoretical semantics. And his cunning version of that, game theoretical semantics, which it is a bit different, but in this respect, I would say that it is a part of model theoretical semantics. The model building is crucial in that approach. So model theoretical considerations of logical languages provide the main way to talk about the world at a philosophical level. I would say that Hintikka thought something like this. And here's a great quote from this unpublished paper, where Hintikka says that not every rules that codifies some inferences is entitled to be called logic. You need much more than this. You need a proper interpretation, but just regular model theoretic semantics, that may not be enough. You need something more robust. You need a sort of a rich philosophical description of the world and the reality behind it. So, well, the next topic would be to assess the question that, is this a good method? Is it successful? Ilkka Niiniluoto just evaluated that it was partly successful. I don't have views on that yet, so yes, I think I will stop here. To be continued. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Lots of time for discussions. Yeah, lots of time for discussions. So put up your hands if you like to have a question. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for a most interesting presentation. I would like to ask your knowledge or opinion of this idea that Hintikka had the concept ideal language. I think that Hintikka thought that it could help us to clarify most meaningful knowledge or truth-like information. And I know that Gottfried Leibniz had a similar kind of idea, which he called as universal language. And he predicted that in the future, perhaps mankind can use universal language so that people all around the world can easily understand each other. And I ask you your opinion that, do you think that artificial intelligence or these large language models can, in the long run, fulfill these, I think, great ideas of Hintikka and Leibniz? Did you get my point?
Wow, what a question. It would be great if I could answer that. but I don't really know, but I would say that Hintikka might have been enthusiastic about the possibilities of artificial intelligence just because he himself was constantly creating these new conceptual tools. So I can't answer your question, but this is my hunch that Hintikka would find this recent development in language models highly interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for this talk. And I just want to ask that many philosophers in early 20th century, and actually not only in 20th century, believe that logic should serve as a basis for practical disciplines such as ethics and political philosophy. And my question is, could Bertrand Russell, logical realism, create a framework for, let's say, realism in analytic philosophy, in ethics and political philosophy, rather than emotivist or something like this traditions in ethics? So what do you think? Can we create realistic logic based on Bertrand Russell logical approach? Because in analytic philosophy, as I understand, it was urgent problem, how to create practical disciplines based on this. So just maybe you have ideas. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is definitely not my expertise in any sense, not practical philosophy and not Russell. We have experts here in the room on Russell. But I would say that one thing that comes to mind is that in Helsinki, von Wright and Hintikka, they developed this, or von Wright started it, and Hintikka then developed it further, the so-called deontic logic, which is about obligations and permissions. And it is a formal construction, but it's very much in a practical philosophy spirit. So with this deontic logic, the idea is that, well, we can explicate the consequences of our commitments and make sense of some of the traditional moral questions. And when Peter Keach wrote a review on von Wright's first paper on this deontic logic, he mentioned that it reminds him of this Leibnizian idea that we could just take our pencils and do some calculations and solve our ethical problems. So there has been attempts to this direction.
Yes, and you said
Thank you.
louder than Utsi and Jani.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I have a methodological question, but about archive. I am also, because I also work with archives, and I'm interested in, like, when you're working in an archive on a philosopher who is like very prolific and it's widely published, and then there are of course tons of material that are unpublished. I'm wondering how you navigate your way around, you know, especially since these are kind of, you also see the intellectual development of a person and what you value more, and, you know, how you realize that, you know, regarding to a change in a topic, whether you should, you know, consider the published material or unpublished material, what comes in the correspondence and things like that. So I was wondering about your take on that.
A great question. In my case, this question, it concerns the future, because the archive, we are just putting it together. So at the moment, I'm basically using everything that I can find, and I just desperately trying to find some more on that same topic and things like that. So we don't have that kind of practices yet formed. So that is our knowledge about the contents of the archive is quite poor at this moment. But definitely these are the questions that we will ponder and think about in the future. Very good point. Very good point. Thank you.
Yes, may I ask? Actually, three interdependent questions in a way. First of all, I just kind of was thinking about what Hintikka wrote in his preface to the second volume of collected papers, this Leibnizian theme of a rational calculus versus a universal language. There he pretty clearly, to my mind, claims that IF logic is an ideal language. And I just don't think that it's even a controversial thing to claim that Hintikka thought that IF logic is an ideal language. But I just kind of was thinking about how Hintikka's thought on these issues evolved during how he developed different kinds of logical tools, because he started with model sets and then went to model logic and then to game theoretical semantics and then to IF logic, that he kind of could have changed his mind or in a way gotten carried away by the development of IF logic, from moving from a very strongly model-based account into a more of a universal language account himself. Would you say that it's maybe possible? Or a possible interpretation of Hintikka?
Yes, as I said, he definitely flirted with the idea that IF logic is the ideal language. But yes, he was constantly searching for new things, and even in the end, I mean, he kept doing it. Yes, it's very difficult to say anything general. I mean, he had a huge career and hundreds of published papers and hundreds of unpublished papers and whatnot. And but yeah, the tape. I mean, interpretations of his life's work and methods, they are up for grabs, definitely.
Just a quick question first. Thanks for a wonderful talk. A quick question, talking about word comparisons. So I was just curious if logic connects with philosophy, what would the topology connect with? What I'm saying, if imagine logic as a vector takes it to philosophy,
Right.
and then I have topology as an arrow takes it to where? Meaning, the relationship between logic and philosophy is like the relationship between topology and...
Topology and...
It's a question, I'm just curious.
You tell me.
This is what, I don't know the answer. This is what... you could say geometry, you could say philosophy, you can say a lot of things, but I'm just curious what you think. I don't know the answer, myself.
I know that topology has something to do with wholes, but I mean, not my field. I must say. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tuukka. Interesting stuff. I'm not a Quine scholar, but I've understood reading some Quine scholars, and I understand that you wanted perhaps to simplify a little bit Quine's method of ontological commitment. But if I understood correctly, it need to be kind of understood in the context of his holism.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a bit more complicated. But anyway, my question is whether, because some points about Hintikka you had, they had at least some kind of holistic flavor at least to me. So do you have any thoughts whether one could see some kind of similar holism in Hintikka as well, especially regarding ontological commitments? I've understood that Hintikka was not a great fan of Quine, but still, thanks.
A very good point. And yes, I have not thought about that, but now I will. But just straight out of the bat, I would say that, yeah, some kind of holistic view it sounds credible.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm Markus Petterilainen. I'm a PhD researcher in social sciences. Does Hintikka have some relationship, or does she mention or study Whiteheadian processual realism? What is Hintikka's approach to process realism?
I try to remember whether I have. I don't seem to. It doesn't ring a bell, but the Whiteheadian thing. But Hintikka wrote a lot about Kant and that kind of sort of a Kantian perspective about the perception being an effort that is like a cognitive process in many ways, and oh well, I'm just babbling on. I don't know really about what to say, but yeah, not perhaps. I can't recall that Hintikka had sort of a papers on realism as such. Yes. Sorry.
Oh, yes. So just months before Hintikka died, he had 2 long sessions with Tuomo in Haikko Manor, where they discussed the dynamic universe. And then they arranged a seminar in the Finnish Society for Natural Philosophy, where Hintikka clearly expressed his consent for describing motion as actualization of potentiality. Okay, but at the same time, he expressed his frustration that people didn't accept this new logic, even though it's available. So I understand that he was not very happy about the reception of IF logic. Am I correct?
Well, at least he gave plenty of talks about IF logic. So yes, it was a topic that he worked on.
Yeah, sure, it was
till the end. But the reception, well, yeah, perhaps not. There are these programmatic papers, yes, where he puts forward this idea that yes, that the IF logic, it has these extensions, and they serve these and those benefits, and there are benefits and it's fruitful and whatnot. But he also thought that sort of classical first order logic, it was part of IF logic. So in some sense, if he had also faith in classical first order logic. So he was not a skeptic of first order logic. So not that kind of attitude, at least that people should. He definitely did not think that people should abandon first order logic and then adopt some other thing. Not like that.
sure.
Any other questions? Hansi? Yeah? There is time.
Thank you. This is again a big issue, but you said at the beginning of your, by the way, thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
You said at the beginning of your talk that something like the Hintikka shared Tarski's view that meaning in formal semantics is always parasitic on meaning in ordinary language, something like that, I think. So then the natural question is, how then do we get, how do we get at the meanings in ordinary language? Hintikka famously was very scornful of so-called intuitions, and very often when we think about meaning in ordinary language or natural language or whatever we, methodologically speaking, we think about it in terms of intuitions, and clearly Hintikka would not have liked this kind of idea. So is there sort of interplay here between formal semantics and ordinary language semantics? Because I was about to say Rasto, but of course I have meant to say Hintikka. Hintikka was always after sharp conceptual structures, and I think he says somewhere that one of his strengths as a philosopher is this ability to see these structures in non-formal stuff, so to speak. So there is a kind of, so it's not, maybe, this is just my semi-educated guess, that it's not just that meaning in formal semantics is parasitic on meaning in ordinary language, but when you are thinking about meaning in ordinary language, you are always thinking, approaching it from a logical point of view, trying to identify those sharp conceptual structures, maybe as Hintikka did repeatedly, creating new tools for for finding such structures, as in the IF logic and the language games of seeking and finding. So that's I don't expect you to have a very clear-cut answer, because this is not a very sharp question, but I think sort of dependent thing. So it's not just one thing is first and the other thing comes after that. It's sort of interplay, something like that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yes, yes. A very, very, very good point. Perhaps I was, what I meant or what I was thinking was that if we think about model theoretical semantics for a formal language and what is going on in there, then I think that it's quite fair to say that what the semantical clauses, the if and only if clauses, what they are doing is that they are sucking meaning from the natural language expressions to formal expressions, and in some sense that's what is going on there.
Yeah.
But now I think you are changing the perspective into something that I had this on my last slide, where Hintikka says that the semantics is not enough. And so the way I read this is that he says that this type of formal semantics, the model theoretical semantics, it is in some sense it is not enough. There should be more, and what this more is, it is somewhat vague here, but some kind of philosophical overall view, and when we get to this level, then what you said is probably exactly like that there is some sort of an interplay of these logical languages, and then this our semantic considerations, which are more philosophical than model theoretical clauses typically are. Thank you.
So let's thank our speaker.